never slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, degenerate sleuths of the night. We gather to boldly go where others have refused. Welcome to the DT show, you salty mofos.
A man accused of killing 4 college students is behind bars, and he has ties to northeastern and central Pennsylvania. State police say 28-year-old Brian Koberger was arrested this morning in a home in Chestnut Hill Township.
I can't find any case law that would support that idea. That somehow a warrant would be needed for DNA left at a crime scene.
We are expected to learn more about the allegations against the girlfriend of a Boston police officer who was found unresponsive in the snow Saturday morning. I-Team sources say Karen Reed was in a relationship with John O'Keefe. She's facing charges including motor vehicle homicide and manslaughter.
So, the Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern. The implications of that information may have profound effects on this defense and defense counsel.
So, get your popcorn ready and your choice of drink. Get your butt on your seat. Like, comment, and subscribe for a treat. Here we go. It's time for the show. The Drunk Turkey Show.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show. I'm your host, Daniel, and today we're going back into the Lilly and Jack Sullivan disappearance. We're going to be talking about why haven't the parents gotten arrested? You know, that's one of the questions that continually comes up in my comment section. You know, a lot of people will say, hey, well, Daniel said this, Daniel said that, Maleyha didn't do this, Maleyha didn't do that. Why aren't they arrested is my question. And so today we're going to break it down. Why haven't they been arrested? We're going to expose the truth, so to speak, and ask those questions and break it down. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. You guys know what to do. Without further ado, let's break it down. Let's get into it. So, you know, the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that the evidence is obviously the biggest reason, in my opinion, of why they, Daniel and Maleyha haven't gotten arrested, right? If you take out their suspicious statements, right, and you focus in and you look in strictly at just the evidence, right? There's nothing there to make a case. There's absolutely nothing there to make a case. Like, there's a situation that we're going to be covering. I want to say her name's Melody. Gosh, her name escapes me right now. Little girl went missing, and her mom left, went on a trip to Nebraska, came back, and kid's not there. She's not cooperating. She doesn't want to talk with law enforcement. She doesn't want to do any of those things. There are clear red flags in that scenario where, you know, she left somewhere, didn't come back with the kid, and is not cooperating with law enforcement. And that kind of tells you and makes you believe, or at least makes me believe, that, yeah, there's something nefarious going on there. You know, and that's not the situation that we have here with Daniel and Maleyha. And like I've said before, and it's Melody Buzzard. I apologize. It just came to me. Melody Buzzard. She disappeared. She's been gone for a while. And, going through her background, they end up finding out that her and her mom took a trip, and her mom came back without her, right? Mom didn't report anything. You know, it was the school that came out. So that was like a huge red flag there. Boom, big red flag. And then mom's not cooperating. Mom doesn't want to talk to anybody. Now there you have something. I mean, there I would, for those that think that that mom has something to do with the disappearance of her child, I 100% agree with you on that case. 100%. Don't disagree whatsoever. However, when you look at this case here and you look at what it is that the cooperation that Daniel and Maleyha have cooperated with, which is, and to whom it matters to, right? It matters to law enforcement. It's one thing if they were going out and talking on podcasts, but not talking to law enforcement or talking to the media through their attorneys. You know, that would be another thing that I would be like, man, that's pretty suspicious. But they're not doing any of that. They've cooperated with who they need to cooperate. They don't owe me, you, or anybody else anything. And so they've cooperated with who they need to. And those that have done the investigation are the ones that have found them at this point to not have any responsibility in the or a criminal offense hasn't occurred. And you know, it's funny because like you'll have these two witnesses that come out and say that they saw or heard something, and law enforcement will come out and say no, that's not the case, and yet people still want to believe it just because it fits their narrative. It's insane. But today it's about the truth, and it's about you know, how the truth will set you free. So let's continue. I want to say thank you to Didi Fuentes with a $4.99. Appreciate you. So these witnesses come out, Bradley Wong and Justin Smith, a week and then 2 weeks after the disappearance, to go to talk with law enforcement. And they say they saw some stuff. Law enforcement comes out and immediately refutes and disputes their claims by saying that Nova Scotia RCMP dispute witness accounts in the missing children's case, basically saying that they have went back and went through the evidence and the surveillance that they have, and they found no evidence of any vehicle at that time. Now, I see a lot of people in the comment section that are a little bit conflicted with this, and I understand why. They're saying, well, does this mean that there's a clear view of Daniel's house? Probably not. I don't think so, because if there was a clear view of Daniel's house, then we'd probably be able to see the little kids, whether they wandered off, got picked up, you know, something else happened to them. We would see them leave, right? So that's not the case. But you don't need, you know, we got to remember what we're looking at here, right? So we're looking at nighttime, and Wong said he could see vehicle lights over the treetops. So that means that the vehicle had their lights on, obviously, right? So when we look at the cameras that are possibly nearby, let's look at those right now. Let's look at that real quick. Here's Daniel's house. Let's look at a map real fast. Let me take that off. So you have Daniel's home right here, and you have the Lourdes campground, which is about 400 meters away, and that's to the entrance, right? That's to the entrance. They have cameras here. Apparently, they put up some cameras, so that people don't break in, so people don't trespass. I don't know why Justin Smith was out there on this campground. I don't know what permission he had or didn't have. I have no idea. That would be 100% speculation. All I know is that, according to several sources, he was staying there, and he'd been staying there for some time. So you have almost a straight shot. You do have kind of like a bend, and so you can't really see all the way straight through. But if you have some cameras, as you can see, there's roadways. I'm assuming there's probably some trail cams and things of that nature right here. And then from what I understand is there's some more cameras around, somewhere around here or here, like in this area. Now, you may not see Daniel's house, but what can you see? There was a case that I talked about, the Idaho murders. And in the Idaho case, let me make this big for you guys. Up here in the top left, where my arrow's at, what I wanted to show you guys is I was able to predict with a fair amount of accuracy based on this surveillance video where Brian Koberger parked his vehicle. And a lot of people were thinking that there was a good possibility that he parked his vehicle in the back parking area. Let me actually pull up the here we go. Let's pull up the map real quick. So in this case here, you have a camera right here, and this camera is displaying so that you can see, and what you end up seeing is a part of this road back here. You can see these houses, and this is the amount of view that you have. Now, a lot of people were speculating that Bryan Kohberger parked back here in this little parking area. Now, this part back here is much more elevated for those that aren't familiar with this case. This roadway right here in front of the house is at a decline. There's a pretty steep incline right here. So this is elevated. And then this empty lot is where the house was, where the victims' lives were taken. And a lot of people suspected that Bryan Kohberger may have parked his vehicle back here. Now, what I ended up doing is I looked at this, this camera here. And what I noticed is that, I'm going to mute this, that when Bryan Kohberger passes by, if you keep your eye up here in the top left, you're going to see, hold on, wait for it. Hope I didn't pass it already. There it goes. All right. You see the light right there on the back part of the, of the house way up there in the back. Now this is at 4:07. So this is right around the time where he's parking. But if you go through it and you look at it the other 4 times that he passed by, you're going to see the light from the headlights glow onto the background of the house back here a few times. And it's doing it in the same manner. It's turning to the right, and you can see these 2 trees that are blocking the light from hitting the house. It happens twice. So it happens multiple times. I think Bryan Kohberger ended up passing the house about 4 or 5 different times. Now, right here, off of this roadway, there's no glow of light, as if he turned onto the roadway and then turned his car on. That doesn't happen. In fact, you can see when he takes off at a high rate of speed, the headlights are going to shine off to the left, and you're going to actually see the glow out here. All right. All this is basically, you can now deduce that he wasn't parked in the front and he wasn't parked in the back. He must have been parked on the side. And I say this because what some folks simply can't understand is during the daytime, if somebody is driving back here without the lights reflecting off of the house and the trees, there's no way that this camera is going to be able to determine whether the vehicle parked here, 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 or here. Now, the reason why I say that is because the kids went missing in the morning during the daytime. The information that you would be getting out of the cameras would be significantly different than the information that you could get at night from cameras that were close enough that would have captured the glow of the headlight beams and the tail light beams going back and forth. You might not be able to tell during the daytime if any of the kids got out and walked around or did any of those things, but at night, you should be able to determine whether or not there was lights shining against the trees and things of that nature. Okay. And so now Mr. Wong has been apparently coming out and talking on a couple of different channels. And I actually do believe that it is him now. At first I was a little bit skeptical. Not going to lie. I was extremely skeptical, actually. But let me see if I have it here. No, that's not it. I was skeptical, and I'll say this. I am also kind of disappointed a little bit. So apparently Mr. Wong was on It's a Crime and Shame last night. And, I get it. He's mad at me or whatever. And there's, her following doesn't like me or whatnot. But one thing I don't do is, because I know that some of you guys say some things about her and her channel. I don't highlight those things. She was highlighting some things that were pretty disappointing that she was agreeing with. And she highlighted some things that were, I guess you could say favorable. Some people were really nice to me, not very many, but some people were. And she did highlight those things, but she also brought up the things where they were kind of making fun of me and things of that nature. So I'm really, really disappointed in that. But, you know, because to be honest with you, I didn't even know about this case until they invited me on this case. But this is Boss Man. And so Boss Man is allegedly or apparently Bradley Wong, right? Now, I still have my suspicions. I think it might be Mrs. Wong, but you guys can be the judge of that. So this goes on to say that she says, I agree. I try to be polite, but I can't with Daniel, him blaming. So that's the one where I said, hey, I can't with Daniel. That sounded kind of like, I've never heard a man say that before, but I guess maybe there is. There was next to none that traffic. The goal is to figure out what happened to these children, not what the F is wrong with the neighbor, what the neighbor has done with his past. I don't know about that one. A goal is to figure out, okay, and so that, you know, it's a couple of the same things that they put on here. Because Mom, Angie, if anybody says anything, apparently they get splattered over the effing internet, where they live and how many kids they have. I don't know who's done that. Like, I've never actually shown who Bradley Wong's like. I'd hope he's not talking about me in this one, because, you know, I've never showed his family or anything like that. I've only shown who he was, and I actually kept his name a secret for a very long time. And I've never actually said that I think more than anything that he committed this crime or that he did anything. I think I've contributed him as being like the Ron Logan. And I've said this multiple times, where Ron Logan was just this guy who was on parole in the Delphi case, and he created an alibi and involved them, you know, created an alibi before the kids' bodies were found on his property. And it wasn't because he had something to do with the crime. It was because he was hiding other crimes that he was committing. Strongly suspect, my opinion, that that's what's going on here with Mr. Wong. But it goes on to say that, and I mean, maybe he does talk about himself this way, you know, because Mr. Wong wants to be left out of it. The theories on this is effing insane. Well, I can tell you, Mr. Mom, whatever, do it again. If y'all want to know why it was so many days after, is because that was how long it took the cops to come to talk to Mr. Wong, even though they are parked in front of his house. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, he's talking like he's not Wong, talking like he is Wong. I don't know. But, you know, here he goes, kind of making fun of me, though. He goes, yeah, Sonny, DT is an idiot. Blocked him. And a bunch of people calling me names, which is fine, you know, but he talks about a chainsaw. And so this is the way we were trying to figure out. Now, just because Bradley Wong doesn't like me doesn't mean I'm going to change my stance on him and say, oh, no, this guy definitely did something to the kids. I'm not like that. You know, I could care less what his opinion is about me. But I got some news about him that he might like. But, you know, he goes on to say, because I know a lot of people in that area now, quite a few. And he assumes it's Daniel and Janie, but it's not. Like, nobody likes this guy in that area. Like, this guy has no friends except for Justin Smith and Lil John Henry Wilson. Those are like the only two friends he has, is John Henry Wilson and Justin Smith. And from what I hear, you know, they partake in a few of the same hobbies. You know, that's just what I'm hearing. But, you know, there's one thing that, well, one of the things that concern me is he does seem kind of violent. I just want to let everyone know that if you drive past my house more than twice, driving slow, creeping out my wife and kids when I'm at work, you know, it's not safe for you to do that. Well, if he's at work, who's going to do something to him? And, you know, but at the end of the day, I really don't think he's smart enough to get away with a crime to this stature. You know, that's probably the only thing that me and Sonny agree on. To be honest with you, I feel like we're not dealing with the smartest bulbs in the world. I think he just uses they like they're not him. But he, like Daniel, kind of tells on himself in other messages. Now, this is when I was talking to Sonny about Boss Man here, and I was like, I don't know, man. I really don't think Boss Man is Mr. Wong. And I was telling her about they. You know, I was pretty disappointed when she was highlighting some things that she said about me. So, well, here we go. That's the one thing me and her agree on, Mr. Wong. is that you're not smart enough to get away with a crime like this, or probably any crime once they start looking at you. Now, why would you go up and, lie about these things? Because there's cameras and they refuted it. To me, I think and this is just my opinion, guys. I don't think it has anything to do with Lilly and Jack. I strongly suspect that it has everything to do with, some other things that they might be doing. So, again, you only got two friends, buddy. Justin Smith and Mr. Wilson. Even your other buddies you think talk behind your back. And they're not just the ones on the internet. Like how I knew about the whole chainsaw thing and everything else. I don't live there. I live freaking far. I live in Texas, right? And yet when I started looking into this case, you have no idea the amount of people that came to me with his name. And I was like, wow. And it's because nobody likes him in that area. Everybody's terrified he's going to go steal their stuff. And I don't know if he still does it. I don't know. I just hear what they're saying. And at the end of the day, that has nothing to do with Jack and Lilly outside of the fact that he's going out there. And according to RCMP, this is, like I said, from RCMP, not from me, not from anybody else, from RCMP, that they dispute your accounts of what you said. Now, I've said it before that, because people ask, well, why don't they arrest him for lying to law enforcement or something? So it's because he may not even be lying. There's a good possibility he heard something. He just may be wrong about the day. You know what I mean? And that's the other thing, that law enforcement have to be able to prove that intent. Like, him being wrong doesn't mean that he's lying. And I think a lot of people get that confused too. And so that's probably why they're, I find it suspicious that they talk to each other and that he told his buddy that it was Daniel, but didn't tell law enforcement it was Daniel. I think that's weird. And I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one that's starting to put this together. Let me find the other channel that was doing it. The Reporter Room, I believe it's what it was. They're starting to catch on. People are catching on to the lies. People are catching on to getting yourself involved into the case, those type of things. Let me see. I think it was the Reporter Room. I want to say it was, yes, the Reporter Room. And go check this out. She questions some of the things, and I've never talked to her. I've only watched part of her show. Was it Alive? I think it was Alive. Yeah, right here it says. Let me go check this.
Back to bed first, and then
RCMP throws witnesses under the bus. Missing Sullivan kids. So, she goes into it. She's like, I'm kind of suspicious. I haven't watched it all. I've seen only 8 minutes and 58 seconds. So I don't know how she goes after this. But up to this point, she did, great job kind of reading into those things, not just keeping the narrative. Because, I understand why people were suspicious about Daniel. And I understand why people were suspicious about Maleyha. I would have been there too. 100%. I would have been standing right next to you guys, May 4th, May 5th, May 8th, probably all the way until July 15th. Come July 16th, I probably would have started to, at that point, probably a lot sooner than that. I probably would have started being like, hey, these guys, why haven't they gotten arrested for something? There's so many people who've gotten arrested who didn't get, what's the word I'm looking for? That you haven't found a body or things of that nature. And so I would have been like, why haven't they gotten arrested? There must be a lack of evidence, like a severe lack of evidence. And I would have, once July 16th came around and law enforcement said that they don't believe that a criminal offense has occurred and things of that nature. And then all of a sudden, once all these documents started to drop, I would have definitely said, hey, you know what? That's not the case. Like, even in this case right now, if something were to happen tomorrow, and it proves that Daniel did something, I'm not going to stick up for the dude. And that's the other thing too. Like, a lot of people think I believe him and that I side with him. That's far from it. Me and Daniel disagree on majority of everything outside of the fact that we agree on the fact that he didn't do something nefarious to the kids. I think that's one of the few things that we agree upon. He thinks that the blanket was planted. I don't think the blanket was planted. He thinks that Maleyha had, the kids taken for CPS reasons and stuff. I don't think that's what happened. I mean, 80% of what he says, I disagree with. And I follow my own mind. I follow the evidence and I follow what's in front of me. And when it comes to Wong and it comes to Justin Smith, the only thing that bothers me about them is the fact that it sounds like, and they could be wrong. Again, I admit that there's a possibility that they're just wrong on the day, right? That they saw something that night. Doesn't mean they're lying. They just could be mistaken. It could have been Wednesday night, and they're mistaken. I mean, it was on the 9th when they spoke to law enforcement. And so, you go from one day to the 9th, and I mean, can you get some of the days and some of the things mixed up? I strongly suspect. And then for Justin Smith, that's even longer. You know what I mean? So I'm more suspicious for the person that can remember everything that they did on a night that didn't mean anything than a person who has trouble remembering that. You get what I'm saying? Because if you remember everything down to like every little detail and stuff, which I have a question about Mr. Wong's detail, because he said to he told Justin Smith that the vehicle that he had seen was Daniel's. Now, this is a vehicle that is driving at night from Mr. Wong's property on the street. You can see the lights, but you guys tell me if you can identify what car is passing by. And you'll be able to hear it too. It is pretty loud. The sound does travel. So like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they did hear or see something. So you can hear it. Now, apparently somewhere there, you can kind of see down here like a flash of light. But could you guys tell what kind of car that was? I got an interview about that. We'll listen to the interview because it doesn't say that. Okay, so I mean, could you identify what car passed by? I sure as hell can't. I don't know if you guys can. Welcome, Jen LeBlanc, to the newest YouTube membership. I'm sorry, guys. I was really upset earlier about and disappointed about the things that were highlighted and said, and more disappointed. But hey, we agree on something. Just saying, the way people are talking about slandering and stalking anyone who contact RCMP would make others not want. No, I agree with you that I'm not saying that that's the case, but slandering and stalking anyone who I don't think anybody's doing that either. Now, the issue is with the RCMP, and this is why they kept things redacted. And this is the thing that I told you guys. I told you guys that the stuff that was redacted was unfounded. And they didn't want rumors going around and things being spread about like this. It was unfounded stuff. And to me, it should have stayed redacted. It should have stayed redacted. One, I mean, I had no intention on talking about who this guy was, but RCMP put his name out there and the mainstream media did. I didn't do that. When it comes to his past, I didn't cause him to go and steal things from people and be in possession of a controlled substance. That's his past, right? It's and it was out there already. I have not lied about anything when it comes to him. I've been wrong. I've been wrong about him being boss man, which I'm still a little bit kind of, but then again, that video was apparently from him. So I do think it's him. Maybe there's multiple people on his account. It might be what it is. I don't know. And so, but yeah, let's look at that interview that you were talking about. Or at least I think you're talking about. I don't know if it's the same one. I found this one today. You guys let me know if this is the same one. Because it may not be.
And we were able to find Maleyha's father. So this was the grandfather of Jack and Lilly. We found him through an address we obtained from a parking ticket he had in Halifax, right? And got an address outside of Sabanakity First Nation, and went and knocked on his door, and he was happy to talk.
I didn't hear about this. It happened on a Friday. I didn't hear nothing until like a Sunday.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I was really upset.
Have you been interviewed? Like, if the police come and asked?
Nope.
Nothing. Eh?
Never asked me anything.
What do you remember about the kids?
Kids, they were happy.
Yeah.
Very happy.
Yeah?
Yes. Every time I seen them, they always lived at their grandmother's in Truro.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. Well, at their great grandmother's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
At Patty Carter's. That's where I used to go visit.
Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Until this guy moved him away, and that was the last time I seen him.
And
So until this guy moved him away, that was the last time I seen him. You know, when I was listening to his interview, what it sounded like to me was I would be willing to bet a lot of money that Daniel and Maleyha's relationship was a very quick one. That they met, there was a very quick honeymoon phase, and they probably moved in very quickly. I don't think they know each other, and I don't think that this is something that is nefarious one way or the other. You know, young people do that sometimes. I think Daniel's, you know, I saw a picture of him, Maleyha, and Jack and Lilly, and Jack and Lilly were real little. You know, it looked like they were a lot younger too. And so, you know, it must have been a few years back. And, you know, I just think that they went really, really fast. And doesn't mean one thing or another. Doesn't mean that Daniel took him away or took Maleyha away or anything like that. But I think they did move fast. And I think that moving quickly also, you know, after the relationship began to sour, because I strongly suspect that was the case. I mean, Maleyha left him, right? She left him. She was planning on leaving him. The kids go missing and she still left him anyways. So the relationship had soured. You know, you don't go around, you know, thinking about leaving somebody if the relationship is going amazing. You get what I'm saying? So obviously the relationship was going sour. But to me, you know, just kind of listening to what he's saying, I would bet a lot of money that Daniel and Maleyha's relationship was a very fast one. A very, very fast. And I bet you they moved in together fairly quickly. I don't know this for a fact or anything like that. But I would bet a lot of money that that's the case.
So he took us to his mother's house, Connie Brooks, in Indian Brook. It's part of Spaganagity First Nation. So we went to her home and we saw family photos all over the wall, some of Lilly and Jack, some of Maleyha as a child.
Yeah.
When's the last time that you got to see Lilly and Jack?
I seen Lilly last year when she brought her up here.
Yeah.
Yes, the last time I seen Lilly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when they took them pictures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Did Lilly and Jack ever learn anything about their Mi'kmaq heritage?
No, because they lived off the reserve.
Okay.
They come up occasionally, you know what, and she brings them up and visit. Yeah.
She brought them up, and did you show them anything?
Yeah, we showed them everything, and then, you know.
And Connie Brooks told us some interesting information. Maleyha had been there to get her status card updated, so she is a member of the First Nation, and she visited her grandmother and other relatives, and her grandmother asked her about her relationship with Daniel Martell.
But I asked her, did he hurt you? She didn't really say he hurt her, but he held her down. He held her down and took her phone on her, and she couldn't talk. She couldn't use the phone.
Now, the holding down part, I don't know. I think that's a possibility. The taking the phone part, I strongly believe. I believe that to be the case. And like I said, I don't think Daniel's the best boyfriend in the world. You know what I'm saying? I've been very open and honest about that. You know, one of the differences between me and some of these other channels who like for instance, there's another channel. I don't want to bring up their names. I don't want to bring up anybody else's name anymore. I feel kind of like I shouldn't have even done that to begin with to start the show off. But there was another channel that I was watching, and they were like, you know, I believe you, Bradley Wong. You know, we side with you. We believe what you say. And I'm just like, for one, I'm not even sure, you know, how do you even know that really is him? Right. And two, like, you've never spoken to him. And the RCMP have come back and said that, not necessarily saying that he's lying, right? But saying that they disputed what they're saying, that there's no evidence of what they're saying on that night, or that it has any significance. So, and the other thing is too, let's just say that Daniel was out there in the middle of the night driving back and forth. What are we thinking he's doing? He's hiding the body in the middle, like he's hiding the bodies between his house and the blanket, because that's what it kind of sounds like they were alluding to, that he was around the area where the blanket was found, right? And Chloe, I think it was a green Elantra. What was he doing, right? If he hid the bodies out there, don't you think that the searchers and the dogs and everybody else that keeps saying that that they're not out there, wouldn't you think they would have, discovered that? What else could he do? Could he only be planting the blanket? Okay. Well, they say they heard him go back and forth a few times and that the vehicle remained in earshot the entire time. So it doesn't say, Bradley Wong's own story doesn't say that the vehicle went further away. He said that it remained in earshot. I think both of them may have said that too. And so what happened with the kids? I mean, shouldn't they have found him if he did something there? The blanket, if he was planting the blanket, Daniel's theory is that the blanket is planted. I'm not even 100%. I'm not even 50% certain on that. I don't think that was the case, to be honest with you. I don't think the blanket was planted. Somebody asked me, what do I think happened? Let's see, Dan, do you still believe that the kids wandered off in the woods? I am like, I am like 90% sure they wandered into the woods. Out of them wandering off into the woods, I leave a slight possibility that somebody could have nefariously picked them up or done something, right? Seen them on the side of the road. I think that there's a possibility that arises out of them wandering off in the woods. The evidence that leads me to believe that they're still out there in the woods is the fact that you do have a blanket out there. Now, I know that Daniel says that the trash bag was torn and they took the trash bag and when they took the other piece of the blanket. But I don't know. I'm kind of skeptical on the fact that hole, that could have been done by an animal. From what I understand, that bag was out there for a very long time. And I think that it's possible that the kids had a piece of that blanket at another point in time. And so my theories have always been that. Now, I do leave like a 10% possibility that, I don't know, maybe Daniel is this, super genius, master genius who can cooperate to the point that he's cooperated, somehow manipulated Maleyha into leaving him, blocking him, not talking to him, but still not still somehow get her to pass a lie detector test as well, and not to turn on him completely. I just don't necessarily subscribe to all that. You know what I'm saying? But I think more than anything, I think they wandered off into the woods. Daniel M. has amnesia about the night before the kids went missing. Daniel M. Daniel Martell, let's be honest, guys. So the documents say that there was a vape that Maleyha had bought him from like High Times or something. Marijuana is legal out there. It does some things to your memory. You know, if he was smoking his vape, you know, I can believe him having some trouble remembering everything in chronological order, and especially with all the stress and pressure that he was going through. Because I guarantee you that he was a suspect at one point. You know, I can't say that he's still a suspect today, but I can say that he was a suspect at one point. And I believe that they pressured him. He said he had a 4-hour interrogation. You know, he was cooperative, so they weren't probably as tough as they would be on somebody who was not cooperative, right? But you know, there's other ways. You know, the goal is to get somebody to talk, right? And so if being their buddy and butting them up gets them to talk, then, and you don't have to go in there like, oh, we know you did something, blah 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 blah, and they're like, because the goal is, we know you did something. Oh yeah, we'll prove it. Let me see your phone. You know, this, that, or third, right? Well, the goal is to get the phone. And if you go in there like, and he's like, I know I didn't do it. I was like, all right, man, we know you didn't. We want to rule you out. Let us see your phone. We'll download it. We'll rule you out. We know you're not the guy. You know, we already know you're not the guy. Give us the phone and we'll rule you out. The objective is getting the phone and the documents and the financial records, getting him to take a lie detector test. And to be honest with you guys, they got Daniel to do all the things they want him to do, that they wanted out of him. They played him like a little puppet. Like, all right, we're gonna shoot the breeze. We're gonna go fast in the police car. We're gonna make jokes, get you super comfortable, so that way you don't turn down a lie detector test. You don't turn down the possibility of letting us see your phone and things of that nature. You don't turn down when they want to bring in the human remains detective detection dogs. So yeah, 100% believe that they thought he was a suspect for a good portion of the investigation. But it's kind of like one of the other more common things that I get in the live chat is that, like, with so many. This one lady, I think it was a lady, and she said something to the effect like, do you think that all these other creators who have been following this case longer than you are just all wrong and you're right? And my response to her was, I think you're asking the wrong question and directing it to the wrong people. What you should be doing is asking those creators who believe they know everything because they've been on this case since the beginning, that do they think they know more than the investigators in RCMP who actually are on the case, who actually have all the evidence, and who have said things like, we don't believe that there's a criminal offense? Because you're barking up the wrong tree by telling me, thinking that I think I'm more right than all these other people. It's not the case. What I'm saying is this is what law enforcement are saying. This is what law enforcement has said. This is what law enforcement has done. This is how they investigated these things. And if there was some sort of evidence of a drug activity, based on the cooperation and the evidence that he provided, he being Daniel Martell, it'd be really easy to figure out whether or not he was selling, buying, making narcotics or anything else. They probably got a pretty good understanding. They probably know more about what Daniel Martell was doing that entire week than Daniel Martell can remember of what he was doing that entire week, based on all the information that he gave them. And so to me, it's not, it's not that I believe I'm right just because I'm looking at things. It's also because I'm looking at the evidence. And that's what I've done in every case. For those that have been following me, I look at the evidence. I look at what is possible, what is not possible, and what evidence law enforcement has and how they can utilize that evidence to determine one way or another if there's something strange here or not. But I strongly suspect Daniel Martell was, smoking a vape, and that's with your memory. You can ask anybody who smokes. No, they'll tell you your memory is not the same when you're smoking, no matter what. Lori comes in with $27.99. DT, just remember when people badmouth you, it says more about their character than yours. Hold your head high. You're a good. I appreciate that, Lori. Thank you so much. You're good. You're awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for following the case and following the channel. Crocky comes in with a membership for 5 months. Thank you. Thank you. RCM Daniel, the RCMP took several days, if not weeks. For what? I remember I highlighted this, but I can't remember what it was for. I apologize. Was it to talk to Wong? I mean, yeah. Let's see. Catherine says, can someone tell me what the theory is about the blanket? All right. So here's what we know about the blanket. We know that the blanket was found, and I found the dispatch audio, and this was, I feel bad about that whole Sunny thing. Sunny has been really a good friend to me, and it sucks that she was highlighting those things about me. But she had actually shared, I think it was her that shared me the dispatch transcripts. And, I went through there, and yeah, like it says that the blanket was found before like 3:52. And so if the bus passed by afterwards, so I'm going a little far. All right. There was a blanket found in a tree. This blanket was found about 3:52 p.m. and it was a piece of a blanket. It was about 1 foot by 3 foot. That's the dimensions that I've been able to gather. And when they found this blanket and Maleyha and Daniel were asked about the blanket, they informed law enforcement that that indeed was Lily's blanket, but it was thrown away. They went to the trash can and they opened the trash can, pulled out the bag, and at the bottom of the bag was apparently a hole. And inside the bag was a piece, or the other part of the blanket, or at least another piece of the blanket. I don't know if they've connected the entire blanket together with those two pieces, or if there was multiple pieces of the blanket. But they found another piece of the blanket in the trash, where Daniel and Maleyha said that they had it. Now, Daniel thinks that Maleyha's family, because they're the ones that found the blanket, planted the blanket. Now, the reason he believes that is because the RCMP documents indicate that at 4 p.m., the blanket is found by Haley. The problem with that is like around 3:50, 3:55 is when a bus passes by. So about 10 minutes before the bus passes, 10 minutes before the blanket is found, a bus passes by and it has a camera on the bus. The bus does not capture the blanket on the camera. And so Daniel assumes that because the blanket's not there at 3:50, but they're at 4 o'clock, that Haley and had planted the blanket. And so the problem with that is apparently the blanket was found possibly before the bus passed by, which is why it wasn't there. So it wasn't planted. I do know that it wasn't there in the morning. So all this talk about Daniel going back and forth in the middle of the night really doesn't mean anything either, because the blanket wasn't there in the morning when the bus passed by. So like, what could he, how does it fit into the case? Even if Daniel got out and was driving around, how does it fit into the case? Was he remained in earshot. So what was he doing with an earshot that law enforcement and this ground search crew and the multiple searches that they had with the dogs not find? I don't know. And again, like I said, I understand why everybody's kind of, the way they feel about it. But put a couple of stars. We'll do some questions now. But that's the theory on the blanket. I think that in the end, I honestly think that the blanket, well, the trash can, it's a weird scenario. I can't say 100% one way or another what happened to it. Don't know. I don't know how it got out there. It is odd. It is suspicious. Now, if it was because of a nefarious act, right? I can see somebody who's a thief who has a drug problem, and I'm not naming names here. I'm just talking about a profile of a person. A thief with a drug problem, being a thief is how they pay for their habit. I can see that being a person who could go through the trash, right? And so there's that avenue. Did it get out of the trash because somebody was trying to steal some stuff from Daniel's house? They went through the trash, found the trash bag, felt that there was like a blanket inside or fabric, thought that it could be something they could use and wash. And so they tore it open, put their hand in, pulled out, try to pull the blanket out and then just ripped out a piece. I guess that's possible. I would have hoped that they would have taken in the trash can for DNA and for fingerprints and things of that nature and see if there's anybody's fingerprints or DNA that shouldn't be on there. You know what I mean? There's probably going to be a lot of unknown based on it being the trash and the trash person's coming and picking it up and things of that nature. But, it'd be interesting if you found something that ended up matching with somebody with a criminal record that has some sort of thing on their past. Yeah, that shouldn't be there. So I would have done that. To the trash can, the lid, everything else that goes along with it. But that's just me. They didn't do that. They didn't pick it up. I think that's a possible fail on their part. The other thing is that this piece of blanket was already in multiple pieces it was already torn when it was thrown away. And that there was another piece where Jack and Lilly already had access to it, whether it was in their room, outside, somewhere. And between the time that they woke up and left the house and the time they obviously left, they picked up that little piece of blanket and walked off. And to account for the hole in the bag, a raccoon could have done it in the last week. If you're thinking about it from Daniel's point of view, he thinks that maybe perhaps somebody went in there, pulled a piece of the blanket out, planted it out there to try to make it look like. I don't connect the dots there like Daniel does. Daniel says that he thinks that Hayden and Haley put it out there to somehow make him look bad. I don't understand how that makes him look bad. I don't understand how finding a blanket down the road somewhere equals him doing something. To me, finding a blanket down the middle of the road somewhere in the middle of nowhere is more indicative that the kids wandered off. Right? Kids wandered off. And then you got footprints in the middle of nowhere, which RCMP say that are kind of out of the way. Now that begs to bring the other question, right? The question of, and I want to put this out in the live chat, and I want to, if you have heard of a case like this, please put it out there. But what case has law enforcement disclosed their investigation about a suspect before they made an arrest? Because RCMP have disclosed everything that they have done against Daniel. They have taken his phone, they downloaded it, they looked at his financial records, they did the polygraph test. What other case, and I'm going to go all the way to the front. So if you asked any questions between now and then, I'm going to put it right here because I'm going all the way down to the front now. But what other case have you guys seen where law enforcement gave out all the information they had about an investigation or even, the amount of, I guess it's possible it's not all the investigation they have, but to this degree, of what they've done to somebody before they arrested him. I've never heard of it. I've never heard of it in any place whatsoever where law enforcement would put out so many things. Because here's the thing. Let's just say something happens with Daniel and they arrest him, right? You don't think Daniel's lawyer is going to use all of this stuff that they said about him not, no criminal offense. They searched his background. They looked at this. He passed the polygraph test. You don't think they're going to use that in his defense? It would be extremely difficult at this point, because of the information that they put out, to find a jury that's not going to, that somebody's not going to find reasonable doubt in what's going on here. To be honest with you, the footprints alone and the blanket, bring in a lot of reasonable doubt that he did something nefarious. Now, if you want to argue neglect and things of that nature, you probably have that argument. But, something different than that, I don't think so, because you do have a blanket down the street that's not very far. It's in walkable distance. It's 1.6 kilometers away. And then you have footprints a kilometer away from that. So in totality, probably, what is that, 2.5 kilometers? That's what, just a little bit over a mile, maybe, something like that, almost 2 miles. And so not very far at all. As you can see on here, not too far. So from Daniel's house to where that is found. And then you have footprints found over here in the mud where there's nobody else's footprints. So somebody couldn't have gone out and like hovered above the mud and then planted the footprints in the mud and then hovered out, right? That's impossible. So those two things alone are going to make it very difficult for anybody to convict him based on those pieces of evidence. But to make it harder on themselves, law enforcement decided to disclose everything that went in his favor. Now, they would have to give him that information anyways, but they put it out there in the public for the public to understand and to know. I just, doesn't sound like it's something that I would see law enforcement do to a person that they believe is a suspect. Two-part question. Do you think there was an actual reason that Brad and Justin's name were unredacted? It seems like anyone who comes forward with any, I don't know why they were unredacted, to be honest with you. I don't know. But maybe it was a mistake. Maybe because they didn't redact it. And I think that the media was just kind of complaining. And so they got their wish. And, why it was unredacted, I have no idea. But I think it caused more of a stir than anything else. And in the end, it's probably not going to account to anything. Like, it's not going to mean absolutely anything, unless they, arrest somebody else. But I don't know. I just don't think that'll come out to anything. Do you still believe, with all the contradicting statements, that the RCMP should be asking more questions? Should be asking more. I would want them to, yeah. I think they should investigate it to its fullest, regardless of anything. In the end, I don't think that Wong and Justin Smith did something. I don't think they did. But I mean, I'm not sold on they didn't either. It's not like they turned over their phones. They've done a background check. They haven't gone to the limits or anything. And I don't think they've been asked to either. And so with that being said, I would still think that they should ask them more questions. But, to be honest with you, the information that you get, it's already inaccurate. They the only thing that you would get out of them more is probably more inaccurate statements. Unless they did something, then maybe. But at this point, I think that they may have probably figured out if they did something. Yes, please hit the like button. Hit the like button. Do you think that the RCMP would spend the money they have the forethought to have the blanket check for DNA to see if the foreign DNA that is non-relative? I heard that that's what they were doing, that they were going to do DNA testing on it. I would assume that if, Wong and, let me rephrase this. I don't know, how Canada's justice system works, and if you have to do a DNA swab when you get arrested and stuff like that, or convicted of other crimes. If you do, and his is there, it shouldn't be that hard to figure out if Wong's DNA is on the blanket. I don't know about Justin or the other guy. So why did they make it sound like it was the kid's blanket? It was the kid's blanket, but they threw it away. It was an old raggedy blanket. They used it to put it underneath the door, so it would stop the draft from coming in. And to me, I don't think you're putting in like a huge blanket for that, right? I mean, you could, but I can also see like if that blanket getting caught on the door and stuff, and it getting torn and possibly even ripping into pieces. So, it was the kid's blanket at one point, but I think they were using it. By the time they threw it away, it had been used for other things. It was like a really old raggedy blanket. Would you get Chris McDonough to guest appear on the case? I would love to. I've talked to Chris McDonough quite a few times from the interview room, right? Me and him have actually had quite a bit of similar thought process when it came to the Brian Kohberger case in many things. Him and I were very similar in our thoughts. And we talked a little bit about what may have possibly happened with Brian Kohberger and WSU and the possibility of WSU knowing about Brian Kohberger or suspecting him as being the possible murderer in the Moscow murders beforehand. Me and him have had extensive conversations about that. I'll ask him again. We talked a little bit about it, but we're both pretty busy. I've actually talked to Mr. McDonough several times, Detective McDonough, several times about the Brian Kohberger case. I can try to get him on. I know Surviving the Survivor. I need to reach back out to him too. He was going to come on the channel. Who else did I reach out that was going to come on? Guys, for those that are new, I've had a lot of people like in the Brian Kohberger case that I've had come on the show. New York Times bestselling author, Howard Bloom. I've had former FBI agent, special agent Jennifer Coffindaffer, Steve from True Crime Web, CSI, had a forensic death investigator on the channel. We had Steve Gonzales, Christy Gonzales, mother and father of the victims, on the channel. We had Alina Smith on the channel. She was in several of the documentaries and ran the Facebook group, the Idaho Murders. We've had Anjanette Levy from True Crime Fix, or Crime Fix. We've had so many people. If you're new to the channel, we've had a lot of people that have come through, especially in the Brian Kohberger case. And, if you guys are doubtful in my abilities to deduce things, I just did a video not too long ago in the Brian Kohberger case on what I got right, what I got wrong. Go watch it. We highlight a lot of things. I got so much of that case right 2.5 years ago, before any of the documents came out. I already was on top of everything. And so I have a way of looking at details, and go check it out. I mean, if you think I'm wrong, let me know. I'm not opposed to criticism, just as long as it's not like being a douche, right? Like, coming in, being a douche and talking smack, stuff like that. I don't take that very keen. Let's see. Are you on crack? Am I on crack? No, I'm not on crack. Are you on crack? Didn't Janie say that they had an issue with Wong in the past for stealing stuff out of the shed? Janie did not say that Janie said to me, so early on, she had told me that they don't keep things on the property because they were concerned about somebody from the neighborhood stealing things. And that's basically what she had said. And I was like, like, who's this person? She didn't want to go into, like, Janie doesn't go into a lot of things, guys, like when it comes to her neighbors and stuff. She's also wanted to take a step back. I haven't really talked to her very much in the last like 2 to 3 weeks. After that whole Taylor stuff came out, she and Daniel took a step back. I think Daniel's kind of coming back in and out a little bit, but for the most part, she and Daniel took a step back after the whole Taylor fiasco. And so, I don't know, but I think it had more to do with they were afraid that somebody was, but they didn't tell me who it was. I kind of figured it out on my own. I asked a lot of people. A lot of people didn't want to say a name. I was like, hey, I'm hearing this thing about a person in the neighborhood likes to steal stuff. And they're like, yeah, he's a dick. Apparently he was out, cutting his, cutting trees or wood down with his chainsaw at about 2-3 in the morning just to piss off the neighborhood. No wonder nobody likes him, but that's what he does. So if you were Wong, would you volunteer your phone to RCMP to show you had nothing to do with the kids? If RCMP asked me, yes. I don't know if RCMP asked. Would I purposely give up my phone? I don't know. See, here's the thing. Kind of like Ron Logan, right? Ron Logan was doing things that were illegal to a certain extent. Not illegal to everybody, but illegal to him. He wasn't supposed to be drinking because he was on parole. And so that's why in the Delphi case, he lied about, or he got an alibi when the little kids went missing before their bodies were found. And it just so happened that during the time he was at the bar having a good time, the kids ended up losing their lives. And that was the time that he needed an alibi for. And so all sorts of speculation and heat came upon him. And I agree that in the beginning, I probably would have been suspicious too. Just like I was suspicious of Daniel, just like I was suspicious of Wong. But the more you look into it and the more things come out, and you start to realize, well, one, you got to know who you're talking about and how capable they are, right? And because there's something called means. And one of the things, like in the Brian Koberger case, I talk about means. It's means, opportunity, and motive. And the means aspect is not just being able to commit a crime, but it's able to commit the crime in the same manner that the crime was committed in. For instance, in the Brian Koberger case, the guy didn't leave DNA behind. He left little evidence, this, that, and a third. That's not something that you're going to, that's going to happen out of somebody who's ill-experienced or somebody who is running off of, on drugs, who's drunk, who's love drunk, who's upset, jealous, in a rage of steroids. Because there was a bunch of these rumors, right, that were going on in the Brian Koberger case as well as to what happened to those kids. And none of those things were true. And I was like, hey, there's audio from 50 feet away. You don't hear the sound of somebody yelling and screaming, losing their mind, saying, how could you do this to me? I hate you. I loved you. Any of those things. There's no sound. You had a person driving around 3 or 4 times. Supposedly these guys thought that Ethan got into a fight with somebody at a party over steroid use or something like that. I'm like, you think that a person that's losing their shit and is on steroids and going through steroid rage is going to pass by 3 times, sneak in real quiet and not say anything and then commit his crimes? Heck no. There's just something called the sound of rage that's going to be happening in those scenarios. And so to me, you have to have the means behind it. And in this case here, I don't think that either Bradley Wong or Daniel or Maleyha have the capabilities of cooperating or have the capabilities of the evidence that have come through. Especially, let me take Wong out of it because I don't know how much he's cooperated with. But with Daniel and Maleyha and the means that they've cooperated and still be able to hide, and not be caught, it'd be weird. It's hard to fathom that they could be able to do that. If I was out stealing stuff, the last place I'd be looking for valuables is the trash. But that's the thing. They're not really looking for valuables. They're looking for anything that they can steal. If they can go through the trash and they see something that's broken, like a stereo or something like that, they can fix it. They can take the copper out of stuff. They can take, a lot of things. And so it's not necessarily the looking for a valuable aspect, like, oh, I'm going to go through the trash and see if I can find like a diamond ring or a watch or anything like that. It's sometimes I'm going to see if I can find something that can, it's copper or shoot, anything. I mean, I had on a couple of people that have been on the channel before that have struggled with addiction. And that's one thing that they've also said, that going through the trash and stuff, try to find something is not beyond that. And so and I hear that there's drugs in the area. Everybody likes to say that it's Daniel. It could be. I don't think so. He's passing drug tests and they're looking at his phone and all this other stuff, but it could be. Could be a lot of other people, but that's what I hear, that there's a lot of drugs in the area. But I think that's probably told about every place, to be honest with you. Every place there's drugs. Planting a blanket is weird. Yeah, I don't think it's, I don't know. Yeah, the footprint is baffling. The footprint, because it ends up being the same size as Lilly's shoe. And I think they did a cast, and I think they believe it's the same one. the boot prints are weird. I mean, well, not so much weird. To me, it kind of solidifies that they wandered off into the woods. Is the boot print. That's the one thing that tells me that they did that. That is my, so when I would talk about the Brian Kober case, and I would talk about, because I was very open-minded. I'm very open-minded, and I'm open to all the evidence and deducing it and things of that nature. So early on, when Brian Kober was arrested and all we saw was the PCA, and obviously we didn't have a lot of evidence, I was a little bit concerned. I was concerned about the way they got their warrants. You know, they were looking at things like his schoolwork, and I was like, man, he's a criminologist. You can kind of, I think it's a little too broad. And then that was kind of the defense's argument in several points, was that a lot of the warrants were too broad. I was a little bit nervous that they were going to lose. I'm glad that they won those, you know, the prosecution won those arguments, but I was a little bit nervous that they were going to lose those arguments. You know, in that case, I'm kind of, in that case, even early on, I was like, yeah, you know, his phone could have been off because of a number of reasons. If he went hiking and his phone lost service, battery died, a bunch of different things, right? But, you know, the one thing that always bothered me was the fact that the phone was off. Well, I'm sorry. Like people said, the knife sheath, the DNA, yeah, he could have touched something. Somebody could have touched something else. You know, he was a criminology student. Did he ever come in contact with somebody from law enforcement? You know, but the one thing that stuck out to me was that his phone was off during the exact time that the murders happened, in that odd hour, right? You know, the car that people were seeing by, I was like, you know, maybe not. But that thing kind of stuck out to me. So that was my thing that said, you know, I can't say he's 100% guilty, but I would say that that's what makes me lean that way. What makes me lean that the kids wandered off more than anything are the footprints in the middle of nowhere on the pipeline. Just kind of leads me to believe that that's where they were. You know, that's what happened there. Daniel gave up his voluntarily. Why wouldn't Wong if he has nothing to hide? Because I think he does have things to hide. I just don't know if the things he has to hide have to do with Lilly and Jack. You know what I mean? I don't think there would, very many people would be comfortable allowing people to go through their phones. You know, Daniel probably understood the dynamics, right? He understood what was going on, that all eyes were on him, and he was going to be blamed for it. So he had no choice. He's like, hey, I want to prove that I'm innocent. You can look at all the stuff that I look at. But I think it's a difficult thing to do, trust. And to just allow all these things, and especially if you're doing things that you probably shouldn't. Now, I'm not saying that Mr. Wong is or isn't doing those things. I don't live out there. I don't know. But if he is, you know, doing anything illegal, he's definitely not going to want them to look in his phone, even if it has nothing to do with Lilly and Jack. Or, you know, there could be so many things. There could be embarrassing things that he doesn't want people to look at, or, you know, and by people mean law enforcement. Law enforcement are people too. They talk and things of that nature. So let's see. I'll be answering just a few more questions and then we'll call it a show. OJ Simpson. What about OJ? OJ Simpson is an example of the justice system's able to get things wrong. Comments of bystanders who give statements remains redacted. Example, the school administrator redacted was interviewed and confirmed to have received a call from MBM. Unredacting neighbors equals suspects. It's a good point, Ron. They did come out and refute them pretty fast. I'm not willing to go there yet, but I do recognize that there are some red flags. You know, like I said, I'm not willing to go there with Wong saying, yeah, I think he had something to do with it. I'm not there yet. I do recognize the red flags. And despite what Wong thinks of me, that's not going to change my opinion on whether or not I think he had something to do with Lilly and Jack. That, you know, whatever. I don't get why the blanket has to do with the missing kids. Was it a small scrap of the blanket? It was about 1 foot by 3 foot, from what I understand. I guess the suspicious part about it is that Daniel and Maleyha said that they threw it away, and now it ended up in a tree. It's weird. It's weird, and it's like where it ended up in the tree. So let me show you guys. It's pretty cool because now they've gone down this road, and you can actually kind of see here. But it was up here, and as you can see, that's a pretty steep incline. You know, even these kids would have had to have climbed up this incline right here. And so for something to not just fly off of the like the back of a car or something like that, but it's got to go up pretty dang high to land like about right here in the tree, and pretty dang far too. I just don't think that's the case. I don't know about, you know, I do understand why people think it might be planted because of its location. It was pretty up there. You know, was somebody trying to make it visible? But this is where it was located. The friends of theirs are lying to everyone. They know what happened. Maybe. See, Benny comes in saying, I have lived in Nova Scotia all my life, and I have never heard the RCMP disclosing information like this before. Well, why would they do that? You know, is it because of, you know, are they trying to say, all right, there's a lot of misinformation out there, and we need to set the record straight because maybe their fear that something could happen to Janie, Daniel, or Maleyha because somebody thinks something negative happened. Wouldn't be the first time that an extremist of some sort believing in one thing or another does something crazy. I think somebody shot up like a pizza place one time because they thought it was like an undercover place for a child thing, you know, child ring. And so, and it was off of, you know, internet stuff. And, you know, for them to be this open about it should say a lot. Why are they this open? It's not because they suspect him to be the suspect, because they're saying the opposite. They're saying the opposite. Are they trying to protect him? Are they trying to say, hey, we don't want something bad to happen to him from some loony that thinks that he did something? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, thank you, Benny. You've lived in Nova Scotia all your life and have never heard the RCMP disclosing information like this, much less before an arrest happens too, right? That's the other thing. Before an arrest happens. By unredacting, they are considered suspects, and the RCMP are looking to get panic and chatter. I mean, could be. It did put his name out there. People did start talking. It got him to talk, didn't it? Got him to talk. Maybe that's what they were hoping. Because he was, I mean, if he's not cooperating and he's not talking much, you know, he said this statement that came to him, because in the statement it says he didn't want to cooperate. That's what the statement said. In the RCMP doc said that he was willing to have a conversation, but didn't want to put anything in writing, did not want to cooperate with law enforcement to that extent. You know, Justin wrote, you know, he wanted an official record of what he said. Wong didn't, you know. He wanted to keep it hush hush or whatever. So he wasn't being 100% cooperative. You know, is he still not 100% cooperative, or maybe perhaps they want to talk to him some more? And I don't know. This is a way to get him to talk. It's successful. If they're watching, he is talking. But I don't know. I'm not there yet on that. See, there's the difference. So this says here, I guess DT never heard about the case from April 18th to 19th, 2020. Loads of info leaked by RCMP before any arrest. What do you mean by leaked information? Because this wasn't leaked. This was broadcasted. This was given out. But no, I don't know about any of this. And then it says before an arrest, and the people arrested pretty much got a walk. I'm not sure what that means. Got a walk. Does Wong and Smith drop their kids off at the bus stop? I don't know if Smith has any kids. I don't know about that one. Wong, from what I heard, he does, but I assume they do, but I have no idea. From what I understand, Wong has kids that ride the same bus. So let's answer that one. Let's see. I definitely prefer watching your channel and hearing your opinions rather than someone with anger management issues. Yeah. The demeaning and name calling other YouTubers do is a turnoff. Yeah, I try not to talk about other ones, and I feel like really incredibly bad that I even brought up what I did earlier, because it's not my style, right, to talk about other channels. I was just super disappointed in that I saw my name being highlighted in such a negative manner when I've never said or done anything like that to somebody like that who I brought on the channel. And so I probably shouldn't let my disappointment get the better of me. And so that is what it is. But because like Daniel and Janie and stuff, they have a really negative opinion about certain creators, not just, several creators they don't like. I don't highlight what they say negative about those people. I don't pay it any attention. I don't bring it up on the screen. I wouldn't do that for like Dr. Vona. I wouldn't do that for anybody who had just because, and I see people in the comment section, because me and Dr. Vona don't always agree on this case. They might say some things like positive for her and negative against me, or negative against her and positive for me. And I don't highlight those. The ones I do highlight it when they're positive of her without having to demean me, or the other way around. Right. And so it is what it is. I don't usually like to highlight those things because I know it ends up drawing viewers over there and stuff. And I'm not talking about there as in her and stuff. I'm talking about like in general, because it's not the first time that somebody, another YouTuber, has posted up some things about me. It's happened. The Pro Burger channel has really hated me. They used to make fun of me and call me names and stuff. It's funny because I ended up being right on absolutely everything. But, I never wanted to highlight any of it because I didn't want to give anybody any credit or attention. This one just bothered me because it was somebody I considered a friend, even though we disagreed on things. And so it was pretty disappointing. It is what it is. All right. And that'll be the end of it. I'm never bringing it up again, regardless of anything. It is squashed. What question is that? Let's see. Other channels are vicious and for views only. They repeat the same things every time. It's tiring. Yeah, I try not to repeat the same stuff. I try not to come in with the exact same thing, guys. That's why, if nothing pops or nothing comes up, I don't talk about the case. All right, just want to make sure I got everything. Sirius Black coming in with her 20-month membership. Thank you. All right, guys. I think I'm going to be calling it a show here pretty soon. Is it possible to get across the border with the kids without knowledge? Don't know nothing about that sort of stuff. I assume so. I don't know how much the border is protected over there. Let's see, across the border. I don't know how much the border is protected out there that way. I know the southern border is, depending on what part you go through, it's wide open or it's completely closed. So, it just kind of depends on which side or what part of the border you go to. You go through Texas, you probably won't get in. Go through California, they'll let you ride in, give you some money, let you hang out, give you a phone, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. Blanket may not have anything to do with the kids missing and just be an animal. That's possible. The only thing about that is that the only thing that bothers, and this is going to be the last thing, guys, the last question of the night. The only thing that bothers me about the fact that it's not something, right? Let's just say that that's the case. The weird thing is that if you follow the dirt road, because, all right, so the blanket was found about 20 feet into the roadway, right? So let's actually measure it real quick, because it was like, so here's your roadway, about 7 yards is where it was at. So that's about 21 feet from the road is where the blanket was found. So if the kids had something to do with it, they didn't throw it from the road. I don't think they'd have the strength to throw it and also have the ability to throw it up. They must have come down this way. Maybe it was getting warm and the child said, I don't want this no more, and just tossed it up in the air and got it caught up on the tree, and they turned down this roadway. If you follow the roadway up and around, it leads to this like little opening area, and in the back area there's a clearing, and this clearing leads to a little trail that you can walk, and it opens up, and wouldn't you know, you end up right here on the pipeline, pretty close to where the boot print was found. So to me, I mean, that's too close. Now, if the blanket was found, I don't know, this direction over here, and then your footprint was found over here, then yeah, there might be something there that is not relevant or nefarious, or probably not relevant. Or even if the blanket was somewhere else that's not along this path, I think so. Well, guys, that's going to do it for me tonight. I want to say thank you to everybody. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. You guys have a great night. I'll be back probably tomorrow talking about Melody Buzzard case. She's a little girl that went missing. I strongly suspect her mom had something to do with her kid's disappearance. There's some red flags there. If you want a case where a mom looks kind of suspicious, that's the case where the mom looks suspicious. We'll talk about it tomorrow. You guys have a great night. Be safe. Peace out. Until next time. See you later. Peace.